You don't have to get it to stand down. You can't get it to stand down. All you have to do is know that it's not what you are. It will continue. And when you experience yourself as that which is experiencing the personality instead of being the personality, when you realize your true nature and you become aware that you have a personality like you have a body, but you're not either one, then things get interesting because you can look from there. You can look from the awareness at the personality, which you can do because the personality occurs in thinking. So if you can look at thinking, you're looking at the personality. And then when you begin to understand that the practice in life, as life happens, the practice in life is to be a witness to the personality when the personality gets stuck, when the personality gets caught up in emotional states, when the personality gets caught up in beliefs, when the personality gets caught up in patterns, to pay attention in such a way that you see that when it happens. And when it happens, instead of being the personality trying to change itself, when it happens, you simply recognize that you can move your attention away from that activity, and when you move your attention away from that activity, you withdraw the energy that it needs. Thinking requires energy, and the energy that thinking requires comes from your attention. When you pay attention to the thought process, you're giving it life by giving it your attention. You're giving it life. You're making it real, and you're making what it says real by identifying with what it says in terms of thinking that you thought those thoughts. When that starts to break up and you start to get free from that, and as you live your life and you start to experience being awake when the patterns happen that are dysfunctional, being awake when the emotions arise that cause you to be crazy, and because you're awake, you see it that way. You see that it's crazy. Yeah. You see that it's a pattern. You see that it's a habit. You see that it's a belief. And because you see that that's the case, you're free from it. You don't have to live inside it anymore. You can live as the awareness of it instead of living inside the activity of the mind all the time. That's not a pleasant life to live. There's no place for any rest there. You can't rest in the mind. You can only rest in awareness. You can only rest in something that is not constantly changing. You can only rest in something that is always available to you. You can only rest in something that, as its natural nature, as its natural state, is peaceful, is quiet, is calm, is satisfied, is content. And the practice allows us to get to a place where we can experience that no matter how much noise there is. No matter how loud the noise is, you can still hear silence. When you're awake, you can still hear the silence. No matter what goes on in the thinking process, you can still be aware of the fact that that's happening in awareness, and that activity is coming from your conditioning. And so it's very important to be paying attention to it, right? So you don't keep living in the past. It's very important to pay attention to it because that thought activity and all those patterns of behavior coming from your past experiences. That's how you know what to avoid. That's how you know what to seek. That's how you know what to try and get more of, because in the past you had that experience. When people get married, they get married because they're trying to keep the experience that they're having of being in love, isn't it? Get married because they're trying to keep that experience, and then they have these ideas and these visions and these beliefs about it that if we fulfill the dream that marriage is supposed to provide for us in terms of living happily ever after, if we fulfill the dream in terms of the experience of being in love is something that has a different context for your life. And when you're in love, when you're in this romantic love and it's passionate and all that jazz, right? Then the rest of the world doesn't seem to affect you too much. You know, you have kind of a sense of security in the experience of this love that you have with this person. And so what the mind does is it has you want to try and capture that, you know, wants you to be attached to that and capture that and try and hold it. And the idea is that, well, if we get married, that will like capture our love for one another, so that the marriage will be an expression of our love for one another. And no matter how often what happens, no matter how often what happens, which means no matter how often the marriage doesn't work, and no matter how often people fall out of that state of love, they still believe in it enough to do it again. You know, they'll just say it didn't work with this person, that's all. But if I get the right one, if I get the love of my life, then I can be in love all the time for the rest of my life. That's so naive. This is childish. It's childish to think that way. On the other hand, if you wake up and you understand, okay, I had a virus. When I was in love, I had a love virus, right? And I was high, and everything was beautiful, right? But it never lasts, okay? That's the way it is. That's just the truth. Rocks are hard, water's wet, and romantic love never lasts. And if you're clear about that, right, then you give up on that. You let it go when it's gone. And when you let it go when it's gone, if you're awake and you've been studying the teachings, you understand that real love, authentic love, right, is not something that comes and goes. It's not something you fall into, right? Real love is generated. Real love is generated. It's generated by experiencing your true nature and experiencing your true nature as that nature is relating to what's happening. Your true nature is empty. Your true nature has an affinity with all that exists. Has an affinity with all that exists. That's just another way of saying your true nature is in love with life. It's in love with all of humanity. It's in love with everything that happens all the time. That's the nature of your true nature. And that's real love. You know, real love is what changes instead of what you're trying to get from the other person when you are experiencing real love. What changes instead of trying to get out of the relationship, you start understanding that love is what you're giving in the relationship, not what you're taking. You know? And if you give it a chance, if you actually allow yourself to experience that to be true, you know, by giving instead of taking, by paying attention to the other person in terms of, you know, what can I do to make them comfortable? What can I do to satisfy them? What can I do to express my love for them? And if you behave like that with the other person, you experience love, because that behavior is an experience of love. You know, you take care of what you love. You know, you take care of the people around you that you love. Now that becomes something that requires some, what they call wisdom, right? Because it doesn't mean that you just do whatever the other person wants and just give them whatever they want. No, sometimes love means that you don't give them what they want because it's not good for them, even if they want it. Right? So love is a practice. Love is a practice. You can feel the love that is the authentic love, but in order for that love to bear fruit, it has to be practiced. You have to express it. You have to show it. You have to be it in the world. Yeah, when you bring awareness to the body, you know, most people are not in their body. Most people are in their head. They're not experiencing their body. The only time you experience your body is when there's pain or pleasure, right? The rest of the time is, you know, it's okay. You know, you're not aware of all that. There's all kinds of things happening all the time in the body. So when you wake up, that's what I was saying before, when you wake up and you start practicing being more aware of the sensations in the body, you can sit in meditation and literally be awake in the body, be aware of the body in real time, feeling the whole body, feeling the whole body. Now, most people are not in the body, they're thinking about the body, and they only become aware of the body if extreme pleasure or pain occurs. So that's not being embodied.